Hello, everyone. Thank you all for attending. My name is Paul McDonald. I'm an adult services librarian here at Carroll Stream Public Library, and I'm here to talk to you about some of the dangers of online video games, particularly for children and teenagers. Now, before we get started, there are 4 key points I want to make about the information in this presentation. Point number 1, am I an expert in this subject? No. No, I am not. I know about video games, and I used to play them myself when I was younger, but in terms of expertise, I'm less of a meteorologist and more of someone who sticks his hand out the window to see if it's raining. I'm someone who's noticed some disturbing developments in online gaming in recent years, and the more I learned about these issues, the worse they seemed. My goal in making this presentation is to raise awareness about these trends and how they could affect you or someone you know who plays online games. If you end up spreading the word to others, all the better. Point number 2, technology is always changing, and it's okay if you don't understand everything right away. You may already know about some of the topics and terminology I'm going to mention here, or all of this may be completely unfamiliar to you. It's fine in either case. No matter how much you do or don't know about online gaming, I'm confident you're going to learn something new here today. Point number 3, all the information I am about to tell you is current as of September 12th, 2023. Any games, companies, or policies mentioned may have been altered since then, for better or for worse. Point number 4, this presentation will not be about harassment, bullying, and hate speech in online gaming, nor will it address the violence and sexual content present in video games in general. Now, I'm not saying these topics aren't important or relevant, especially for younger players. It's just that these topics have already received extensive coverage, both in news media and popular culture, and the issues I'll be addressing today are both much more recent and much less talked about. So, with all that established, here are the subjects I will be covering today. Ratings for video games and what they mean, particularly for online games, how in-game purchases such as loot boxes can pose a threat to online gamers, and what can be done about these dangers. I will be available for a Q&A session at the end if time allows. However, this is a recording. By the end of this presentation, you will learn how to read a game rating, what exactly loot boxes are and what problems they can cause, and how to talk to younger gamers about these issues. Now let's get started. First and foremost, let's take a look at video game ratings. The official ESRB ratings for video games are usually straightforward and easy to understand, but online games are different in ways that make them harder to classify. What is an ESRB rating, you may ask? An ESRB rating is a content indicator assigned by the Entertainment Software Rating Board, a nonprofit regulatory organization that sets age limits on video games and their associated content. The standard ESRB ratings consist of E, E10+, T, M, and AO. Games rated E for everyone are for all ages and have minimal use of violence or inappropriate language. Games rated E10 for ages 10 and up may contain mild instances of violence, blood, language, and suggestive themes. T for teen-rated games for ages 13 and up may contain increased but still moderate levels of crude humor, suggestive elements, blood and violence, infrequent strong language, and simulated depictions of gambling. M for mature-rated games for ages 17 and up may contain extensive amounts of violence, blood and gore, sexual content, and strong language. The final rating, AO, or adults only for ages 18 and up, includes prolonged violence, graphic sexual content, and gambling with real currency. Keep that gambling with real currency label in mind. I'll come back to that later. Now, you may have heard of people comparing the video game rating system to the film rating system. E is like G, E10 is like PG, T is like PG-13, and so on. This is accurate in a broad sense, but video game ratings differ from film ratings in one important way. Unlike film, video games can include interactive online content, which allows players to engage with both other players and the game itself in ways that the ESRB can't rate ahead of time. The interactive and always evolving nature of online games means that their content, and by extension their ratings, are not as fixed as they are for films. A PG-rated movie isn't suddenly going to become a PG-13 rated movie or vice versa after it's already been out for a while, but rating shifts like that can happen to some of the most popular online games on the market today. What's more, the ESRB can change a game's rating without even notifying players or consumers. Take, for example, the recent ratings changes for the popular online games Rocket League and Roblox. If you're unfamiliar with either of these two games, I've pulled up promotional material for some of their most recently updated versions. I'll start with Rocket League. The ESRB website's page on Rocket League defines the title as, quote, an action racing game in which players drive futuristic cars to play games of soccer. Players attempt to score the most goals as they compete in a variety of game modes, end quote. The ESRB page goes on to describe the various modes and features of Rocket League in detail, but one key point is left out. The fact that this game used to have a higher rating than its current E for Everyone. The ESRB rating for Rocket League was lowered from E10 for ages 10 and up to E for Everyone in a game patch on April 14, 2016. Notes from Rocket League developer Psyonix on the game's official website claim that the rating change would only affect parental controls, but did not elaborate on this point. The current E rating for Rocket League has a single content descriptor of mild lyrics, which the ESRB website explains is because, quote, one song contains lyrics that reference tobacco. No mention is made of either the game's previous rating or the rating's change. As a sports game, Rocket League is relatively simple to understand. Roblox is considerably more complicated. As you can see, Roblox is made up of a variety of different game types with different art styles, and the ESRB has much more difficulty assigning a rating to this unique kind of gaming experience. Unlike Rocket League, the ESRB website does not have an official page for Roblox, just a lengthy blog post. This post defines Roblox as an online gaming platform that allows users worldwide to make, share, and play multiplayer games with one another using a specific set of software development tools. In other words, Roblox is not an individual game, but an online community full of all different kinds of games from different creators that all use the same basic framework. Some of these games are less all ages than others, as evidenced by the brief clip of a first-person shooter made on the Roblox platform that you just saw. The blog post mentions that Roblox is currently rated T for teen, but the platform also has its own internal rating system for the individual games created within it. Roblox internal rating system consists of 4 categories: all ages, 9+, 13+, and 17+, all of which are accessible to players despite this being a teen-rated game. Parents must set up allowed experiences controls ahead of time for players to avoid seeing content rated for ages 17 and up in a game that is rated for ages 13 and up. And this isn't even the end of it. Until September 2022, Roblox was rated E10 for ages 10 and up, which creates further confusion as to which age ranges this game is meant for and under what circumstances. An article in Forbes reported that the ESRB rating for Roblox was raised from E10 for ages 10 and up to T for teen in September 2022. As the article described, ESRB stated that this alteration was caused by, quote, changes in the platform that offer a wider range of content for different age groups, end quote. An article from the website Pro Game Guides published that same month elaborated further on this development, saying, quote, this change comes only 3 weeks after Roblox's second voice chat beta released the feature to everyone over 13 with a verified phone number and email. At the time of this article's publication, Roblox has not released an official statement regarding this change, end quote. The Pro Game Guides article went on to indicate that, quote, before the change on September 8th, 2022, Roblox was rated E10 for fantasy violence, as stated on the ESRB website. Now, however, as stated in both the description for the Roblox Xbox app and in the Apple App Store, Roblox has a rating of T due to infrequent/mildly realistic violence and infrequent/mildly realistic cartoon or fantasy violence, along with the possibility of having infrequent mild language, infrequent mild or suggestive themes, and simulated gambling, all of which may not be suitable for children under the age of 12 or 13, end quote. In addition, a 2023 news article from PC Gamer demonstrated that individual ratings for games on the Roblox platform were also inconsistently applied, citing how, quote, Roblox has various age ratings which can affect which accounts see a given piece of content, with the idea being that the permissions on a child's Roblox account are set by a parent or responsible adult. The content creators fill in a questionnaire to apply these ratings to whatever they've made. Thus, even though the criteria are set by Roblox Core, it is not age rating player-made experiences manually, which is simultaneously something of a cop-out and an innate problem for a platform of this size. Few big tech companies will come out and say it, but a manual pre-moderation at this scale is not something they want to invest in or consider practical, and thus the solution is to rely on the community and moderate based on reports, end quote. What this means is that both ESRB and the developers of Roblox take a hands-off approach to content restrictions on the Roblox platform, instead relying on individual creators to apply their own standards for how to rate their content. In short, with specific Roblox games rated according to the subjective perspective of their developers, the Roblox rating system itself being similar but not identical to the ESRB rating standard, and the larger Roblox platform given an inaccurate and inconsistent rating by the ESRB, figuring out what, if any, content on Roblox is appropriate for a younger gamer is a complicated and confusing process. Not what you'd expect from a game about tiny little Lego knockoffs, is it? So the examples of both Roblox, Rocket League and Roblox show that new content added to online games, whether developer-made or player-made, can cause the ESRB to reevaluate their initial rating of the game and adjust it accordingly after the game has already been released. It is important for parents and gamers to monitor the ratings of online games so that they know when a game's ratings have changed and why. That being said, the ESRB cannot predict everything a user may see or hear when playing online. So the rating for a game with online capabilities, which the ESRB refers to as interactive elements, can only account for so much. Interactive elements are identified in their own section within the larger ESRB label for a game. These labels are present on the cover of physical game boxes, on the product page when purchasing a game digitally, and are listed with full descriptions on the ESRB website. There are three parts to these labels. The lettered ring categories right here, which I have already discussed, the content descriptors, which provide more detail on what is present in-game that affects the rating one way or the other, and the newest addition to these labels, the interactive elements banner down near the bottom. This section of the rating is just as important, if not more so, than the other two, as interactive elements are the most variable aspects of an online game. The official ESRB site says that, quote, interactive elements highlight interactive or online features that may be of interest or concern, but do not influence the rating assignment of a product. This includes users' ability to interact with each other, the sharing of users' location with other users, if purchases of digital goods or services are offered, and/or if unrestricted internet access is provided. According to ESRB standards, the primary interactive elements that can be found in games are in-game purchases. This title has opportunities to purchase in-game goods or premiums using real-world money. In-game purchases includes random items. This title has opportunities to purchase in-game goods or premiums using real-world money, but the player does not know exactly what they will be receiving prior to purchase. Users interact. This title offers possible interactions with other users and user-generated content with no filters or censors. Shares location. This title renders the user's location accessible by other users of the app or game. Unrestricted internet. This title provides an internet browser or search engine with no filters or censors. Online music not rated by the ESRB. This title provides songs for download or streaming for music-based games that have not been filtered, rated, or evaluated by the ESRB. It is vital for both parents and gamers to be on the lookout for these specific interactive elements in a game's rating and to know what they mean, as their presence could result in a game's rating shifting unexpectedly over time. As troublesome as shifting game ratings can be, however, the effects of in-game purchase options on younger players are far more damaging, as they have the potential to not only impact a player's finances, but their psychological development as well. Before I talk about these potential pitfalls, though, let's go over exactly what in-game purchases are and what they mean for the player. According to the ESRB, common forms of in-game purchases include in-game currency that can be exchanged for game content, pay to continue extra lives that allow a user to keep playing after losing the game, pay to win upgrades, items, and bypasses that make completing the game easier, cosmetic items that do not alter gameplay, expansions that add new content to the game, such as mechanics, characters, and items, season passes that allow access to new content that will slowly be added over a given length of time, and loot boxes and gacha. Those last two elements are what I'll be focusing on here, as loot boxes and gacha introduce an element of random chance to these features that blur the line between purchasing and gambling. The ESRB website defines loot boxes as, quote, a catch-all term that can refer to a number of similar randomized purchases, such as item packs, card packs, prize wheels, treasure chests, etc. In some games, loot boxes can be earned through gameplay and/or can be purchased using either real money or in-game currency. In most cases, you can't see the items characters, weapons, etc., before you make the purchase. On a similar note, the ESRB describes gacha as a series of game mechanics where, quote, the player will insert digital currency for items of varying rarity. This could take the form of new playable/usable characters, more in-game currency, power-ups, in-game items, etc. These are very similar in design to loot boxes, and the terminology is somewhat interchangeable. In most gacha games, players can gain in-game currency through both regular play and/or additional purchases with real money, end quote. For simplicity's sake, I will only be using the term loot boxes when referring to in-game purchases that contain elements of random chance. But it should be noted that any game described as a gacha game, or that includes gacha mechanics, falls under the same umbrella. In-game purchases have become the backbone of the video game industry's revenue stream, as they generate profits both in purchasable games and free-to-play games. An August 2019 FTC workshop on loot boxes in video games included findings that, quote, microtransactions, another name for in-game purchases, have become a multi-billion-dollar market, accounting for a significant percentage of all revenue derived from video games. Many games today, particularly mobile apps, are free to download and rely on in-app purchases to pay for their development. Even games that customers pay for upfront may include microtransactions to cover the high costs of development and updates. Free games appear to have some of the more problematic microtransactions and loot boxes, end quote. The fact that the industry is heavily profiting from in-game transactions is especially concerning given that the most randomized and unpredictable kinds of transactions, loot boxes, are readily available in games meant for children and teenagers. In a September 2020 study of the 100 highest-selling Android games in the UK Google Play Store, the 100 highest-selling iPhone games on the Apple App Store, and the 50 most popular games on the online game distributor Steam, most of the games containing loot boxes were marketed to younger audiences. As the study reported, quote, 93% of the Android games that featured loot boxes were deemed suitable for children aged 12 and up, as were 94% of the iPhone games that featured loot boxes. Many of these games were deemed suitable for those ages 7 and up. Further discoveries in the study proved that 18 of the most 50 played Steam games contain loot boxes, approximately 299 million installations. Of these, only a small proportion are rated as suitable for those aged 7 and up. However, several are still classified as suitable for those 12 and up. Whether loot boxes are legally considered a form of gambling is a highly contentious point, as this affects whether teenagers and children can access games containing loot boxes at all. I didn't add the gambling addict text on the cell phone in this image, by the way. This picture is part of a series of stock images and videos from photographer Miroshnichenko labeled Addiction I found on the free stock images website Pexels. Most of the images in the Addiction series depict young adults or children holding phones or video game controllers. Food for thought. Loot boxes are often present in games intended for children and teenagers, yet the ESRB's official standpoint is that any game featuring gambling with real currency is rated adults only, AO, for ages 18 and up. This is particularly significant because even though mature-rated games are for ages 17 and up and feature content deemed highly unsuitable for children and younger teenagers, mature-rated games are much more accessible due to the severe restrictions on any game with the adults-only label. Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox do not allow adults-only games to be published on their platforms, and the popular online live streaming service Twitch does not allow adults-only games to be broadcast by its users. Any game rated adults-only is therefore going to be extremely limited in both distribution and visibility. This disincentivizes the ESRB from officially labeling loot boxes as a form of gambling, as that would make any game containing loot box mechanics an adults-only game by default. Given how much loot boxes are contributing to their profits as an industry, the ESRB is reluctant to take this step. And as a result, it is implicitly condoning games that encourage children and teenagers to gamble with real money. The sudden rise of loot boxes in child-friendly games caused controversy, and the ESRB was eventually forced to make a public statement on the issue. An October 2017 article in Forbes reported that this statement indicated that the ESRB did not consider loot boxes to be gambling. The Forbes article disputed this, citing how the act of opening loot boxes affects the same areas of the brain that are involved in addictive behaviors such as gambling. The ESRB would continue to receive criticism for their stance on this subject in ways they could not continue to ignore. As reported by the online technology news publication Ars Technica, U.S. Senator Maggie Hassan sent an open letter to the ESRB on February 14, 2018, which asked them to rethink their ratings policies regarding loot boxes and highlighted the potential negative effects loot boxes could have on the developing minds of children. Senator Hassan also said that the Federal Trade Commission might need to intervene if the gaming industry did not address this issue on their own. A little under 2 weeks later, on February 27, 2018, the ESRB announced the addition of in-game purchases to their list of interactive elements for the first time, though this label did not initially highlight the presence of randomized in-game purchases, such as loot boxes specifically. It was not until April 13, 2020, over 2 years later, that includes random items was added to the list of interactive elements to specify the inclusion of loot boxes or other purchases that utilize chance. What exactly separates an in-game purchases includes random items qualifier from the includes gambling with real currency qualifier that necessitates an adults-only rating was not made clear. ESRB President Patricia E. Vance explained the decision not to mention randomized purchases in the initial in-game purchases label during a 2018 conference call with Ars Technica, saying that loot boxes were not mentioned by name because, quote, a large majority of parents don't know what a loot box is, and that, quote, parents need simple information. We can't overwhelm them with a lot of detail. We have not found that parents are differentiating between a lot of these different mechanics. End quote. Vance also stated that the ESRB was, quote, unable to find any evidence that children specifically have been impacted by loot boxes or leading them towards some sort of tendency towards gambling. We really, truly don't know of any evidence supporting these claims. End quote. While Vance may have been able to claim that no evidence existed that tied together gambling and loot boxes in 2018, research studies in the years since have found a definite link between them. March 2020 study on the connections between gaming and gambling in the United States, Australia, and Aotearoa, New Zealand, found that problem gamblers, people who have trouble managing their gambling habits, spend on average around $13 more per month on loot boxes than their peers who did not have such symptoms. The previously mentioned September 2020 study of loot boxes in iPhone games, Android games, and Steam games stated that, quote, most countries have laws that prohibit children from gambling. However, there are currently no restrictions on which games may contain loot boxes, end quote. A January 2022 review of 16 studies on player engagement with loot boxes found that, quote, loot box usage is prevalent among adolescents, regardless of whether they recognize themselves as gamers or not. It is expected that engagement with loot boxes among adolescents will continue growing in the absence of relevant interventions or legal measures, end quote. A study published in April 2023 measuring whether loot box use led to later gambling behavior in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada indicated that, quote, loot box engagement increases the likelihood of gambling initiation. Our data further indicate that the randomized rewards presented by loot boxes are integral to this relationship, as opposed to microtransactions more broadly. Combined with other research showing earlier age of onset of gambling is associated with adult gambling problems, and loot box purchasing is commonly reported among adolescents, These effects underscore the need for loot box regulation to reduce youth and young adult exposure to these products. Legislation has been drafted in response to growing concerns about loot boxes, with one of the more prominent examples in recent memory occurring right here in Illinois. A July 2023 evaluation of worldwide regulation and policy regarding loot boxes mentions Illinois Bill HB 2943, filed in February 2021 by the 102nd Illinois General Assembly, which proposed the following mandatory warning for games that include a loot box. Quote, "Attention parents, a loot box system exists in this game that permits an unlimited amount of real money to be spent without any age restriction. Real money is exchanged for random digital items. This process has been linked to real-life gambling addictions in both children and adults. Please regulate your own spending as well as your children's spending," end quote. This bill failed, as have many other state and federal bills involving loot boxes that were proposed in the past few years. So what have we learned from all this? ESRB ratings for online games are inconsistently applied and can change without warning, and the ESRB does not openly publicize when a rating changes or offer details on why the change happened. The presence of online interactive elements in a game creates further ambiguities if determining if that game is appropriate for specific age levels and limits the effectiveness of the ESRB rating as a whole. Additionally, the ESRB has demonstrated a clear reluctance to associate loot boxes with gambling, fearing the loss of profitable revenue streams from gamers who will make the initial purchase of the games themselves and then continue to make in-game purchases via loot boxes. This is in spite of the fact that many games containing loot boxes are intended for both children and teenagers, and the use of loot boxes is proven to increase the likelihood of gambling behaviors later in life. The only conclusion to draw from this is that the ESRB is evil incarnate. No, not really. As much as I've criticized the ESRB's business practices, the problems with online gaming cannot be traced back to a single organization and would take much longer than a 1-hour presentation to fully describe. I should know I tried and failed to make it all fit. My original outline for this presentation was 3 times as long. Rather than cast blame, I'll end this on a positive note. What can we do about all these issues? How can we help younger gamers have a safe and fun experience when gaming online? As it turns out, the ESRB has some very helpful tips. Patricia E. Vance, president of the ESRB, states that, quote, "If you had to boil down the best advice into one simple phrase, it would be to stay involved and empower your children to make smart decisions when playing games online. That will go a long way towards ensuring their online worlds are safe and welcoming places to have fun, make friends, and learn," end quote. Or, in other words, just talk. Talk to your kids about the possible dangers of the games they play and do it as more of a discussion than a lecture. Show them you understand why they love what they love, and let them know you don't want to see them get hurt by an industry that can be indifferent, if not downright exploitative, toward its users. Don't get me wrong, monitoring ESRB ratings and setting firm parental controls are still good steps to take in protecting your children, but communication is still key. With trust, patience, and a willingness to listen, both parents and children can use this topic as an opportunity to learn, grow, and become more aware of the potential of technology to change their lives, both positively and negatively. In my mind, that's a game worth playing. Thanks.